You know those dreams where you meet people you've never seen before? Not your friends, not your family, but complete strangers, and yet there's something weirdly familiar about them. Sometimes they're friendly, sometimes they're not. Well, today we are diving deep into what the legendary psychologist Carl Jung thought these mysterious visitors really are.
So just take a second and think about it. Who are the people who show up in your dreams? Are they helping you out? Are they chasing you? Or are they just kind of there, in the background? This isn't just a random question, you know. It's actually the doorway to one of Jung's most powerful and honestly most challenging ideas about who we are. Let's look at a dream from one of his patients to see what I mean.
Okay, so here's a dream that Jung wrote about in his book Man and His Symbols. You've got this successful guy, and he's suddenly confronted by two very strange, very hostile characters, a pushy, power-hungry official and this quiet Frenchman. But here's the wild part. The dreamer just stands his ground, confronts them, and poof, the threat just evaporates. So, what in the world is going on here? Who are these guys really? And why does simply looking them in the eye change everything? To get the answer, you need Jung's master key. He had this revolutionary idea that these figures in our dreams, they aren't ghosts or messages from beyond. They're parts of us. Specifically, they're pieces of what he famously called the shadow. All the parts of our own personality that we've pushed down, locked away, and refused to look at.
This right here is Jung's own definition, straight from the archetypes and the collective unconscious. And you've got to pay attention to his wording. The shadow isn't just the evil part of you. It's so much more subtle. It's everything you find, well, incompatible with the person you want to be. It's all the stuff you'd rather not admit is there when you look in the mirror, so you just shove it into the dark.
So what kind of traits are we talking about exactly? Well, this list from Man and His Symbols really helps make it real. Things like egotism, mental laziness, carelessness, maybe a little bit of cowardice. The key thing here is that these are often the little sins, right? The exact things that drive us crazy when we see them in other people, and that's usually because we hate to admit that we have a little bit of that in us too. So our mind just packages them up and sends them back to us in our dreams as these strange, often hostile figures. All right, so once you have this key, this idea of the shadow, you can suddenly start to unlock all sorts of other confusing dreams. You can actually see the shadow at work, trying to get your attention, trying to tell you something you desperately need to hear. Now, this one is fascinating because it's a dream from Jung himself, which he wrote about in Memories, Dreams, Reflections. And when he was awake, Jung had this immense admiration for his mentor, Sigmund Freud. But in his dream, Freud shows up as this grumpy, petty ghost of a government worker. I mean, what a weirdly specific and negative image. Why on earth would his unconscious mind paint this picture of a man he respected so much? And this is a perfect example of one of the shadow's main jobs. Jung realized the dream wasn't some hidden wish for Freud to fail. It was a correction. His conscious mind had put Freud on such a high pedestal, he saw him as basically flawless. So his unconscious had to step in and say, hey, hold on a second, and present a more critical, more balanced view to create a much more complete and realistic picture of the man. Let's look at another one, also from Man and His Symbols. So a guy named Henry dreams he's leading this big mountain climbing expedition. He's ambitious, he wants to get to the top. But the rest of his party, who are, you guessed it, also parts of himself, they just sit there. They are totally passive. They won't move an inch, and because of them, the whole thing fails. What that dream did was hold up a giant mirror to Henry's inner conflict. His conscious mind, his ego, wanted to go out and achieve things, but his shadow, represented by those lazy climbers, was full of passivity and resistance. The dream was basically screaming at him, hey, a part of you is actively sabotaging your own plans. He couldn't move forward in his life until he finally turned around and acknowledged that resistance inside himself.
And that story really gets us to the big question, right? Why does any of this matter? Well, it matters because ignoring your shadow doesn't make it disappear. In fact, it just gives it more power. The goal isn't to kill it or defeat it. The goal is to bring it out into the light and understand it.
You can really see the two paths here. If we ignore our shadow, we end up projecting those traits onto other people. We blame them for the very things we can't stand in ourselves. You know that one person whose arrogance or laziness just drives you up the wall? Well, you might just be reacting to a part of yourself you've disowned. But when we integrate the shadow, when we own those traits, we get self-awareness, we achieve psychological wholeness, and all that energy we were using to keep it hidden, it becomes an incredible source of strength. So how do we even start to do this? It sounds pretty intense, right? But Jung's work gives us a kind of roadmap. Step 1 is simple. Just notice. Pay attention to who keeps showing up in your dreams, especially the ones who make you uncomfortable.
Step 2, face them. Just like that man in the first dream. Don't run from the figure in your dream. Ask yourself, what does this thing represent? And finally, step 3, integrate the message. Acknowledge that, yeah, maybe that trait, that energy, it's a part of you. That's the path to becoming a more whole person. And that leaves us with this one last really provocative thought to chew on. We're so used to seeing the dark figures in our dreams as villains that we have to fight off. But what if Jung was right? What if that hostile stranger, that monster, that frustrating character, what if it isn't an enemy at all? What if it's a messenger from the deepest part of you, holding the exact piece of the puzzle you need to become whole? What if the villain is actually trying to be your guide?